And in just a few hours, in fact, Donald Trump will take the stage there at the Detroit Economic Club, as we mentioned, to unveil his latest plans for the U.S. economy. It follows one of the worst weeks his campaign has had, plagued by a litany of controversies. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton plans to combat Trump with an economic speech of her own in the same city, in fact, later this week. But first, the Democratic nominee is pounding the pavement in Florida today on what her campaign calls the first of a two-day jobs tour. And Clinton is hoping to rebound from her own controversy, this one surrounding her recent comments regarding her email scandal. Longtime Face the Nation moderator, CBS News political contributor, and a man with whom I was honored and lucky to spend a bit of time in Cleveland and Philadelphia.
We had a lot of fun out there,
didn't we? Sure did, Bob. Bob Schieffer, good enough to join us today. Lots to get to, Bob. I do want to ask you first, though, about Hillary Clinton, who seems, even after what was, if not perhaps a good week for her, certainly a lousy week for her opponent, seemed to give some of it back in attempting to speak once again about an email controversy that simply will not go away. At this time, she looked to parse an answer that included a reference to short-circuiting. What do you make of her decision?
Well, you know what I think,
speak of it,
Josh, and I mean, I'm not here to give anybody advice. I'm here to cover this campaign, not to advise either side. But I think in her case, you talk about short-circuiting an answer. I think short answers would be much better. I mean, she seems to, over and over, when she's trying to explain this email thing, is saying, I made a mistake, but. I mean, these yes, but answers. Why doesn't she just say, I made a terrible mistake? I would never willingly or knowingly put the nation's national security at risk. I learned a lot from this, but I made a terrible mistake. And then let it go at that. I mean, but to try to kind of, weave through all these talking points and these fine points and all of that, I just don't think that serves anybody well. It
seems that there's an echo, at least, of a problem that many people see with Donald Trump, the inability to let certain things go. I mentioned his bad week, largely of his own doing, as he kept up a days-long feud with the Khan family that looked to not just perhaps impact his poll numbers, but certainly give GOP lawmakers, the establishment, potential donors a lot of pause. Today, he looks to then reboot his campaign with an economic speech in Detroit.
Well, he may. Well, let me just start out this by saying his advisors are desperately trying to get him back on track. Get the narrative back to something other than these quips that he seems to make off the top of his head. I mean, he has this genius for topping and stepping on his own story. I mean, remember when the FBI chief was slicing and dicing Hillary Clinton? He chose that day to compliment Saddam Hussein, of all things. I mean, and we saw that last week, and we're now seeing it is really beginning to affect these polls. He's billed this as an economic speech. We'll see if it is an economic speech. I mean, if a baby cries, maybe there'll be a different headline coming out of this. If somebody holds up a sign, we'll see. But his advisors just feel he's got to do something to kind of get this thing back on track.
It's a remarkable thing to think when they said, after the week that was, he needs to focus more on, frankly, attacking Hillary Clinton. Given what we saw in Cleveland, it seems almost impossible to think that he hasn't been attacking Hillary Clinton enough.
Yeah, and I mean, whether that's his answer or not, I mean, his advisors think he's got to stop doing what he's doing, basically, because you've got now in the Republican Party, I wouldn't describe it as panic, but there's a real fear among party leaders, among elected officials, among donors, that it's not so much a question now of whether Donald Trump is going to win or lose the presidency, but whether, if he loses big in some of these key states, whether he takes down the Senate with him. I mean, you look at Ohio, you look at Michigan, you look at Pennsylvania, you look at New Hampshire. All of those states have Republican incumbents. what they're saying to me, these Republican strategists and so forth, if he loses those states by 8 or 10 points, he's going to take down those senators.
Which is where the trend certainly suggests they are. We're between 8 and 12 points.
Yeah, I mean, if the election were held today, I think Trump would lose those states and lose them big time. But the election is not being held today. It's going to be held in November. A lot can happen between now and then. But if these trends continue, what they're worried about is that they're going to lose their majority in the Senate. They only have to lose a net 4 seats, and it goes over to a Democratic control if she wins. And that's what they are concerned about. And this is real, Josh. I mean, I was calling around last week. I talked to a former Republican cabinet officer who was calling his friends and calling people that he knows, trying to see if they could get some kind of a group together to go to Trump and ask him to resign as the nominee.
To resign.
That's not going to happen. And I don't think Trump would take their advice if they did get such a group together. But it just shows where the thinking is now. These people are really worried. Yeah. And you remember back in '96 when Bob Dole was the nominee, when it became obvious as they got close to the election that he was going to lose, Republicans started running ads about keep the Republican Senate, you know, and started diverting money into that.
We saw Paul Ryan say the same thing, and he used the same term they used in 1996, the idea of the blank check. I mean, that says a lot. Paul Ryan has seemed like a man for months now aware that a congressional majority may be the best hope for the GOP.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw Donald Trump finally last week endorse Paul Ryan and John McCain. But did you see that? Did you see the clip? It was almost like it was a hostage making a statement that somebody was back there saying, we're going to waterboard you unless, I mean, he very carefully read it word by word.
Donald Trump could have just held up a newspaper for proof of life. I'm with you there.